Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. I'm sitting down today with Kelly Milner Halls. We've had a little bit of tech difficulty per normal for Scott. And Kelly is an author of lots of books, but today we're talking about her latest book that isn't even out yet. By the time this is released, it still won't be out, and it's called A Dinosaur for Washington. And I learned something very early on here, and it's a Suciasaurus, and that's as close to pronunciation as I'm going to get, so we're just going to leave it at that. But this is the only dinosaur fossil ever found in Washington State, which I find fascinating. So, Kelly, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And you say that now, but you might in 15 minutes regret it. Okay. But so we'll get back to the specific book in a little bit, but what's your backstory? You're in Spokane now. You're an author of, a prolific author, frankly. A lot of books. I'm on your website. There's all sorts of, I'm going to call it quirky, and I mean that in the best possible way.
I tell kids I get paid for being weird.
Yeah. So let's unpack that for a second. How did being weird as a career come about? Did your high school counselor sit down and go, Kelly, you should be weird for a career? What happened? How did that happen?
I was born in Texas.
Okay.
From parents that go way back in Texas.
Okay.
I grew up in a place called Friendswood, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. I was not a girly girl. I hang out with boys because they had more fun things to do.
Okay.
I like to catch frogs and lizards and toads and snakes. And anytime anybody found a poisonous snake, they went and got little Kelly because she knew which ones were poisonous.
Are you kidding me?
So I was kind of a weird little kid. And my mother tried really hard to make me not weird. She tried to make me a girl by giving me dolls and hairdressing stations, and didn't stick.
It didn't work.
I was never going to be a typical girl.
Okay.
I liked weird stuff.
Okay. All right.
So my dad worked for IBM. He worked at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. He was the IBM liaison to help get the guys on the moon.
Wow. Okay.
So he was a science guy, and he was a very conservative science guy. But we would sit down and watch weird documentaries like on Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. And it was one called 21st Century, which is like, what will the future be like? And now we're in the 21st century.
It's nothing like they told us.
And I would say, is Bigfoot real? And my dad would say, I guess we need more evidence. Now, he could have shot me down.
Right.
But he didn't.
Right.
Because science is about asking the questions.
Okay.
So I grew up. We moved all over God's earth. Ended up going to high school in California, where I was still weird, but found my footing in high school journalism.
Okay. Right.
Because if you've moved around a million times as a kid and you're really shy, asking other people questions is a lot easier than focusing on yourself.
So were you shy as a kid then?
I was, just because I was always the new kid.
Okay. All right.
And you make a couple friends and then you move again. And my average was 9 months. After I turned 11, we started moving all over the place.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it was just, I was not particularly comfortable being the new kid all the time. But if you're in journalism, it gives you permission to talk to anybody.
That's very true.
Because you may not want to talk about me. But if I say, hey, I want to write an article about you, Scott, you go, well, what would you like to know? Right? Even if you're the cutest football player on the team.
The podcast is the modern version of that. It's amazing. I can say, hey, I have a podcast, and people want to talk to me. It's just...
I know, isn't it great?
I still scratch my head about that. Okay, so you got into...
So I studied journalism in college.
Okay. Where'd you go to school at? What college did you go to?
I followed a boyfriend to Brigham Young University.
Okay. All right.
He dumped me after 6 weeks.
All right.
So I was a drift, but they have great skiing, so it was okay with me. So I went there, studied journalism, thought I was going to be Woodward and Bernstein.
Okay.
Got out of school, discovered if you're an investigative reporter and you write about the bad guys, that the bad guys have kids. And I thought, I cannot disrupt their lives.
Okay.
It needs to be done, but it wasn't going to be me. So for a while I didn't write. And then I had kids and I realized, hey, somebody writes all this kid stuff.
Right.
And if I write for kids, I never have to be mean-spirited.
Okay.
And I can write the weirdest stuff possible because kids like it as much as I do. So that's where I landed. I did newspapers and magazines first because it was most what I'd studied.
Uh-huh.
And then I was challenged, you should really write some books. And I took the challenge, and now I write primarily books. I do occasionally articles, but and I've done about 60 nonfiction books. I love nonfiction. I tried fiction. I'm not good at it.
Okay.
So I love my nonfiction, and it's the weird stuff.
Well, kudos to you to figuring it out. I mean, no matter what our path is in the world, when people figure out what their path is and they're on it,
absolutely,
that's awesome. I mean, that's wonderful.
And I've never been rich. I never will be rich, but I am really happy. And there's something to be said for happy.
There's a lot to be said about happy. That I think rich and happy would be a nice combo, I guess. But I'll take happy over being rich too. So I mean,
rich would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has its advantages.
If it doesn't land, happy fills up the cup. So now I go around schools all over the country and talk to kids and teach them about research skills and critical thinking, and let them know that being weird is fun and that it's okay if you're that weird kid. I can pick out the kid that was the weird little me, the little bouncy girl that couldn't sit still. And I think there's the me, and there's the me, and there's the me. But at the end of every presentation, the little cheerleader or the little class president comes up to me and says, my family's weird too.
That's funny.
So you're secretly giving everybody permission just to be whoever they want to be, which is a great message for kids.
I'm on your website. This is the way my brain works. Warning, I'm looking at the review for your new book, and it's signed Becky Rasmussen, Illinois, English teacher and crazy cat lady.
Her choice. It was her request.
I love that. I just love that.
And who knew it was going to be so relevant in the political system right now?
So a dinosaur for Washington.
Yes.
Walk me through how you came about the topic and kind of the research that it took, and we'll go from there. And
let's go back in time a little bit. Remember that little girl in Texas catching lizards?
Yes.
Well, my mother said, guess what? We're going to go see dinosaurs this weekend. And I said, what's a dinosaur?
Okay.
So I was about 7 years old. I had no idea what they were. And they had been at the World's Fair in New York City, the Sinclair dinosaur. Sinclair is an oil company.
Right.
And they had dinosaurs as their logo.
Of course.
So they sponsored this big exhibit at the museum, at the World's Fair in New York City.
Right.
And they had life-size dinosaur models. Mm-hmm. And after the fair, they toured the dinosaurs all over the country.
Right.
And they were coming to Houston.
Okay.
So my parents took me to see the dinosaurs, and I nearly died looking at these gigantic lizards, and I fell in love.
Okay.
Now, most kids fall out of love eventually.
Yeah.
But I never did.
Okay.
So when I was writing all this weird stuff, and I just rushed anytime I had the opportunity to write an article about dinosaurs. So like when Godzilla came out, the first renewal of Godzilla, I interviewed paleontologists who had started by loving Godzilla. So I looked for any opportunity to write about dinosaurs I could. And I wrote 6 dinosaur books.
Oh, wow.
You cannot make a living writing about dinosaurs. You have to write about other things. Thankfully, I have lots of weird interests. But I wrote 6 books. And then I was doing a school visit in Seattle, Washington. And the librarian ran over to me when I got there in the morning, and she said, look at the newspaper. And it was a Seattle Times article about the first dinosaur fossil ever found in Washington State. And when I moved from Colorado to Washington, mm-hmm. Colorado has tons of dinosaur fossils everywhere. Washington didn't have any, and I was a little bit sad about that. So when I saw that headline, I said, wait, what? I thought we had no, because Washington State was under a prehistoric ocean.
Okay.
So dinosaurs didn't live in the ocean. They might have died and fallen in the ocean, but they didn't live there. Okay. Prehistoric marine reptiles lived there.
Okay.
But after the ocean receded, after the waters cleared, we have tons of volcanoes. Mm-hmm. And the volcanoes covered whatever fossils might have been there with up to 3 miles of basalt.
Really?
So even if they were there, we weren't going to find them.
Okay. Yeah.
So I had to resign myself. No, we have, mammoths and prehistoric horses and all those great ice age mammals.
Right.
But no dinosaurs. So when she showed me this article, I was like, wait, what? And I was just so excited. And I said, can I have that? And she reluctantly said yes. And I set it in my idea box. And then I started thinking, I really want to write this book, but it has such a Washington Pacific Northwestern slant that all the National Geographic and those people didn't want it because they wanted something broader. So I started writing for a Seattle publisher called Sasquatch Books. And their children's imprint is Little Bigfoot. So I said to my editor, listen, I've got this great dinosaur story that's Washington-centric. You want to see it? And it took me 4 years to convince her.
Really?
And I finally did.
Okay.
And we revised and revised and revised, and it came to life. So it was about these two guys who were amateur fossil hunters. Now, Sucia Island is part of the San Juan Islands.
Okay.
And it's got the only Cretaceous, which is the last dinosaur period, the only Cretaceous rock beds that we know of in Washington State. And they're 40 miles off the coast of Seattle. And it's against the law to collect fossils in Sucia Island. But these guys had a permit.
Okay.
And anything important they found, they turned over to the Burke Museum.
Okay.
And that's how they got around the law. So when they went out looking, and it was, they went out in May of 2010. One of them had a seaplane.
Okay.
So the two of them, their names are Jim Godart and David Starr. They decided to go fossil hunting. They were looking for ammonites. And ammonites are a little bit like nautilus. They're the little cephalopod that lives in the shell.
Right. Okay.
And those they can have. They already had permission from the Burke. They could keep whatever they found. But they found something strange. They found a big piece of bone. He said it was about the size of a softball.
Okay.
And he said, I think there's more to this. I don't think this is the whole thing because it looks like it's broken.
Right. Okay.
So they spent the rest of their search looking for the rest of it, didn't find it. Went back in April of 2011, a year later, still looking for the rest of it, didn't find it. Went back in March of 2012, still looking for it. Voila, they found the other half. And they know this is not an ammonite. This is important. Because whatever it is, it's significant. It's a part of a bone. At first they thought maybe it's, whale bone because whales came after dinosaurs. But they knew it was important. So they took the GPS location and they contacted the Burke and said, we're going to bring home the first half. You guys are going to need to come and excavate the second half because it was in this big piece of concrete. Not man-made concrete, concretions that were made by nature.
Okay.
So it took about a month, and then they went out and they collected it. So this mysterious bone, which was, how big was it? It was 16 inches long, almost 17. Big bone. What is it? And they didn't know. They couldn't know until they sent it to the Burke, and it took 2 years to separate that bone from the rock that surrounded it.
Okay.
So you'd have just the fossil.
Right.
And not the rest. So this is going on and on and on until I get the newspaper. And they say, yes, it's a dinosaur bone, and it's from a cousin to Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I think, yippee skippy, this is so cool. Now, Oregon has one dinosaur fossil. Now they have two, but they had one when I started the book. And it was a plant-eating iguanodon.
Okay.
And they had toe bones.
All right.
And I thought, this bone from a T-Rex cousin is way more fun than the toe bones, although the toe bones are super great. And I'm glad they found that in Oregon, which means it's possible there are others. So that's how this book came up. I loved looking for example, all the newspaper articles talked about the scientists at the Burke. Nobody talked about David, the two guys that actually found it, Jim and David.
So on your website.
So my first trek was, wait wait a minute, who are the volunteers? Oh, they all said, volunteers found it and the Burke collected it. And then they wrote the paper and they were, credited with finding this discovery. But I keep saying volunteers and I keep asking, who are the volunteers?
Right.
And nobody knows or nobody says. So then I get the scientific paper at my local library, which you can only get at libraries, otherwise you have to pay a fortune. And way down at the end of the paper, in little teeny print, it says, many thanks to Jim Goddard and David Starr, our volunteers. So then I have to find them.
Were they hard to find?
Because I have to tell the whole story, not the short story that's in the newspaper. So it ended up just being this great mystery story and adventure and perfect for kids. And even though it is a Washington-centric book, if you're any kid who loves dinosaurs and you're hoping to someday find fossils,
Sure. No,
you're going to get excited by this story.
So on your website, on the page for the book, there's these two guys. Are those the two guys that found? Are those?
No, those are the guys at the Burke.
Those are the guys at the Burke. Okay.
That's Dr. Peacock and Dr. Christian Sidor.
Okay.
Christian Sidor is the head of paleontology at the Burke,
Okay.
and Brendan Peacock was a graduate student. He is now a Dr. Peacock,
Okay.
and he's at a museum in Idaho.
Okay.
So they're the guys that, were in all the newspapers.
Right. Okay. So they're okay.
Great guys.
Right. So the two guys that actually found it, Jim and David, what do they do for a living?
They're retired. One was a doctor and another one was, I don't remember what he did.
Okay.
But they, have free time and they love hunting for fossils. One of them loves to collect prehistoric crabs. That's just his favorite thing.
Huh.
Who knew you'd want to collect crabs, right? But the other one likes sea mammals, whales, and
okay.
That's just what they really prefer.
Okay.
So they just retired, and one guy has a seaplane, and so the other guy rides along. And if you got a seaplane, why not? Because there's only so many ways you can get to Sucia Island.
I've never even heard of it.
You can take the ferry
before.
To get a water taxi. You can take a kayak.
So,
but it takes some doing and it takes some arranging.
Is the island inhabited at all?
It has very few inhabitants. They're mostly people that come in their boats.
Okay.
They have boat docks that they take up during the winter months so they don't get destroyed.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but you have to really put some planning into going to Sucia Island. And Fossil Bay is where the fossils are found. Obviously, it's named after what's discovered there.
Right.
So there's this neat little bay in Fossil Bay, and they just land the seaplane and wade up to shore and spend the day.
So you researched this, you tracked down the guys, the quote unquote volunteers. You tracked them down, you talked to them, you got their stories, you talked to people at the Burke, you put this all together aimed at kids. And
right.
You're giddy is the word that comes to mind when you realized it's a cousin of the T-Rex.
Yes.
And now the book's going to come out. And how do I want to say this. Kids' books, children's books. It's not like, quote unquote, little Timmy's looking on Amazon for a new book necessarily. Mom and dad are typically looking at things for little Timmy.
Right.
So how, as an author, how do you promote and educate the consumer that this book is available?
It's challenging. It can be very challenging. Book reviews help. The fact that I've been doing it so long, I've been writing books for kids for 30 years.
Okay.
So I have lots of librarian friends all over the country.
Okay.
So part of it is when they know I have a new book, most of them will order it.
So
just because they trust me to do it right, to make sure that my facts are correct.
Okay.
I mean, I'm old school journalist. I'm 3 sources. Now it's 2 sources. Okay. And not all the sources are very good.
Well, let me ask.
But I'm really careful in what I write for kids, because if I'm not, then it's like lying to a kid. And that's just like,
yeah, that's not cool.
Premium horrible.
So let me ask you a question. Let me interrupt you and ask you a question, because I was at the Wenatchee Library the other day. I take my mother there once a week to get some books. And I was walking around the library the other day, and I was up in the they have a really nice Northwest collection, a lot of old books on the Pacific Northwest. Kind of fun to pick through the titles. And And my mother's complaint is that they don't have a lot of new stuff. So my question to you is, when you know librarians, can you explain to me, this is just a question for me. How do libraries decide on what books they want to carry? Is it based on the audience that they perceive they have? Or is it
partly?
Okay.
Yeah. And they know their audience, the people that generally come in. They also have professional magazines like Publishers Weekly and Kirkus, and where they review new books.
Okay.
And librarians have a tendency to go over all those new books to try to decide what they should stock, what they should buy. Mm-hmm. So reviews are our friends. We want reviews.
Right.
I do not live for reviews because I do not write for reviewers. I write for kids. Mm-hmm. And so there's that.
So a typical library, let's just say the Spokane Library. All right. And just Spokane probably has multiple branches. How many copies of your book does an average library network pick up?
Spokane Public Library, I know the children's buyer there. I think she bought 15 copies.
15 copies. Okay.
Which is a pretty decent sale. The other thing I can do to promote, I do contests. Like I'm giving away a fossil hunting kit.
Okay.
When the book, I ask people to do early reviews, which is why you got the cat lady on my website. It's also on Amazon.
Okay.
And if you did an early review, you received a dinosaur swag bag.
Okay. All right.
Which is a lot of junk that nobody really wants, but it's fun to get in the mail. So, I mean, I can show it to you.
The fossil.
But anyway, it's this beautiful dinosaur bag with all kinds of stuff your mother would have thrown away about a week later.
So the fossil kit that you're giving away, does it include a seaplane? Are you giving away,
can you say that again?
I was teasing. Are you giving away a seaplane with each of the fossil finding kits?
Oh boy, wouldn't that be fun? I wish I could. If I ever did get rich, that's what I do.
There you go. Give away
seaplanes. So you can go to Sucia Island more easily. Sucia Island, are you hearing that over and over again?
I am, but I'm still not getting, my mouth will still not.
You did great. The first time you did Suciasaurus, you did great.
It's like
it's a lot of shit.
Yeah, it's like my tongue swells up when I'm getting ready to say the word.
It sounds like you're trying to be naughty.
Yeah, anyway. So this is kind of interesting to me. So how long did this process take you? Now you pitched the book, but it took you a while to get it approved.
It probably took about 6 years.
6 years of work.
4 years to convince her, and then 2 years to write and revise and finish the illustrations and layouts and all that stuff. So it's for a book that I got paid $4,000 for. 6 years is not enough to make a living.
No, that's
bad math.
That's not good. But
you can see why I'll never be rich.
No, but
I do school visits.
Right.
Librarians all over the country say, "Come and visit our school," and I do presentations, and that helps supplement the income.
So you're compensated. The schools pay you to come and do.
Yes.
Okay.
They pay me to come.
All right.
Now, if they can't afford it, I'll do it for free, or I'll do Zooms or something.
Sure.
I never leave anybody out because they don't have money.
Right.
But it does help, and you'd be astonished by how much authors charge for school visits.
Well, you have to if you're only making $4,000 to do a book, you got to make it up some. I'm kidding, but
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm so grateful. That's why I have such a network of librarians and teachers, because I've been to schools all over the country.
Okay.
I think there's only 4 states they haven't visited.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and I even got to go to Beijing, China for 2 weeks once.
Wow.
Which was pretty great. But I know they're communists, but they're really nice people. Go figure. But I know. Who knew? But that's supplements the income, and that's for my 30 years career. That's what has kept me alive.
Right.
And now, because I'm so old, I'm 66 years old, I have Social Security. And I filed nice and early because I wanted to have a little less pressure to travel quite so much. But I still have to travel, and I still do, and I love it. I love school visits. If I could teleport to New York State or Houston or any of those places that have me quite frequently, I would love it, because I love the kids. That's the best part of the job. They're just so great. But the travel, airports are not sexy anymore.
No, air travel is no fun. How many visits do you think you did in 2023?
Well, COVID came in and knocked it way out of everything.
Yeah.
And it, for the years of COVID, we didn't do school visits because and then they're just now starting to recover. So last year, I think I did, I don't know, 15.
That seems like a lot, actually, to me.
But I've done way more than that. I was gone probably 7 months of a year.
Wow. Okay.
Doing school visits.
Okay.
So, and that way I could vary what I would charge for what they could afford and everything. So now I have fewer because COVID really slowed everything down. Yeah. But I don't need quite as much income now as I used to.
Okay.
Thank you, Social Security.
There you go. So at the time that we're recording this, which is in August of 2024, the book's due out in September. So this episode will go live a little bit before the book is released. So we're going to snap our fingers and we're going to say that the release was a smash and that you're happy and your sales are where you want them to be and you're starting to get some book tours because of it. What's next? You got another book idea cooking around in there?
I have 2 more books finished.
You have 2 more books finished. Okay.
Finished and sold and scheduled.
Okay.
So the next book is called Sea Monsters, a Field Guide. Because I did Cryptid Creatures, a Field Guide. Cryptozoology is the study of mysterious animals.
Okay.
Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, right back to that weird circle.
Right.
And it did so well that Sasquatch said, "Hey, do you have another cryptid book?" And I said, "I always wanted to do a sea monster book." And they said, "Done." So Sea Monsters, a Field Guide is a sequel to Cryptid Creatures, a Field Guide. Cryptid Creatures had all kinds, on land, on air, everywhere.
Okay.
And this is just sea monsters. 50 different sea monsters, eyewitness accounts. Some of them are the old faithfuls like Loch Ness, but some of them are very strange. Some of them I'm pretty sure are not real.
Okay.
But I give the eyewitness reports and then I give the facts that it's leaning towards probably someone's imagination. Because we have a rating system from 1 to 5.
Okay.
And 1 is not real and 5 is real and everything else falls somewhere in the middle. So there's that. My illustrator, his name is Rick Spears. He's brilliant. He's doing 3 drawings for each of the 50 cryptids.
That's what I'm looking at.
An adult, a baby, and a skeletal feature.
Okay.
Which he did for the other book too. The other book that's coming out the year later, that one's in 2025. In 2026 is Cryptid Babies.
All right, let me look at that.
And that is a board book for very little cryptid fans.
Oh my gosh.
So if you have a little boy who loves cryptozoology and you have a brand new son who's 2 or 3 years old and he wants to be part of the game, he can have Cryptid Babies. And there's nothing scary about it. It's just cuddling.
No, they're cute. They're really cute. Okay.
They are really cute. And I want to do the babies because in Cryptid Creatures, the babies are the most popular by far.
Okay.
I mean, I thought they'd appeal mostly to the girls, but no. The boys, the girls, everyone loves those babies.
Interesting.
And I'd always wanted to write a book about baby cryptids. So my daughter and I got together, we wrote it. And when she said, "Do you have any more cryptid stuff?" I said, "Yes, I have sea monsters and I have this baby cryptid story." And she said, "Great, let's buy them." So that's 2025 and 2026. I've also written a book about an animal called axolotl. Which is a salamander that can regenerate its body parts. So I followed its discovery, which was in Mexico by the Aztecs. And then how it's gone forward to near extinction and how the people in Mexico are trying to save it now. So kids love axolotl. And then another one I've finished but not sold is on tardigrades, which are the toughest plant animals on the planet Earth. And they're microscopic. The biggest one is the size of a poppy seed. But they can live up to 200 years without water. They live in watery spaces. But if you take away their water, they pull out their legs and their head inside their body, and they go into what's called a ton state. And they form this sugar barrier, this armor. And they just wait until water comes back. And they said, wow, these guys are really tough. They can go without water. They can, what would they do in space?
Okay.
There's no water, no air, extreme heat, extreme cold, ultraviolet rays. They were sure sending tardigrades to space would kill them. Nope. They brought the capsule back down. Tardigrades say, hi, how you doing? We're fine.
Wow.
We had babies in space. So kids love tardigrades too. So that's the next two that are not sold, but will be sold because I won't give up till they are.
That's amazing to me.
I like weird stuff.
Yeah, you do. But you make it approachable. You know, it's
well, the thing is it may be weird. Like I've got two books that I haven't finished to really. One is True Stories About Poop.
Okay.
Which every little boy on the planet will want.
Yeah, probably.
And it's odd as I started on a joke first. I started collecting poop stories because they were funny. And then I thought, I'm learning stuff from these poop stories. I mean, I didn't know that when a whale poops, it feeds the whole ecosystem.
I didn't.
Did you know that?
I did not.
I did not know there were certain animals that have square poops. How is that possible? So I'm looking at all these weird poop stories, and I'm learning poop factastic. It's just, who knew? So that's a little beyond the normal weird for me. So I'm going to have to really finesse that one. And there's another one. I want to do true stories about death because there are so many weird death rituals.
So have you talked to your illustrator about the poop book that, you know, you've got some...
I think he would be game. He doesn't like drawing people as much.
Okay.
And there are people associated with, so like there was apparently a 2-sided toilet so you could sit next to your best friend while you pooped back in medieval times, which, you know,
okay,
he probably won't want to illustrate that one.
Okay. True story. I'm a real estate broker to keep the lights on. Okay.
Yeah.
I showed a house and the primary bathroom's suite, you know, big bathroom.
Yeah.
Two toilets in it. Wall between the two toilets. Except for the wall didn't go all the way to the wall.
Oh.
So you could be using the toilet and holding each other's hands. There was like an 18-inch gap.
That's pretty weird.
It was so weird.
Did you ask about it?
No, I didn't.
Because you want to get other listings.
No, well, it was the buyer that was looking at it. They liked the house, and then they saw that, and that was one of those unrecoverable deal breakers, and so we didn't.
It's just strange. I know.
Really weird. And so when you say there's
really
this two-sided toilet, and I'm like, oh, geez.
Maybe it's for passing toilet paper.
I don't know. The paper, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, okay. Let's.
But see, that would haunt me. I would be sleeping and dreaming. I would have to do research.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just let that one go right now.
Definitely.
So no, it was just, but anyway, so you're kind of prolific then in your, the ideas and the output.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me because, some authors I've had the pleasure to talk to, it's very interesting to me to talk to authors. Some are super prolific. Some are like squeezing, you know, blood out of a turnip. They each word was, you know, painstakingly birthed, and they never want to go through the process again. You sound like you're just this font of ideas. And
well, here's one reason why, if you're wondering why.
Okay.
If you write one book every 5-6 years, you have a spouse who's paying the bills.
Okay. Fair.
I do not.
Okay.
And I had 2 daughters to raise on my own. So it was sink or swim.
And they like to eat. It's funny.
They
Kids
do
like to eat.
something other than top ramen whenever possible. So it was hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when I first started writing books after that challenge, I was so frustrated because there was this neat book series called Grossology.
All right.
And they're just gross things.
Right.
And I said, I wish I'd written grossology. I wish I'd written this one. And I was just so depressed that I hadn't written all these other people's books.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, what do you want to write?
Right.
And that's when I said, well, I like that weird stuff, so let's give it a go. And dinosaurs are weird if you don't love them. And then I wrote a book called Mystery of the Mummy Kids, which is all about mummified people who were mummified before they were 18.
Okay.
So it's basically a book about dead kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I discovered if you talk about the dead kids, you draw the kids in.
Right.
They want to read it. But then when you explain what their lives were like, and what led to them being mummified, then the kids are tricked into learning a whole lot more about, sociology and archaeology and all these neat things that go along with mummies. So you can use this candy
Mm-hmm.
to help kids eat their meat and potatoes.
So let me ask you a question. Out of all your books, is there one that's sold noticeably more than the others? Do you have a...
Tales of the Cryptids, that was the first cryptozoology book that I did. Mm-hmm. And that's probably sold, well, it's been in print 18 years.
Wow.
Which is unheard of in kids nonfiction.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I mean, your average book, if you're 10 years, if you're lucky.
Okay.
So that one's been around forever, and they're taking it out of hardcover, but they're going to leave it in paperback.
Okay.
Which is perfect because there are a lot of kids that can't afford hardback. And if I go to school visits, if I have a good paperback I can sell, that's always great because it's an equalizer.
Right. Okay.
But that one's done really well. And I thought it was going to be my best book forever. I thought I'm never going to see that again. And then Cryptid Creatures, a field guide, just took off.
Okay.
For some reason, it's got like 900 Amazon reviews.
Wow.
And Tales of the Cryptids has, I think, 70.
Okay.
And I was like, that's why they wanted more cryptid stuff, because they're going, holy cow.
Right.
Who knew there was a niche for this? Well, I knew. Rick and I have been trying to write a sequel to Tales of the Cryptids forever.
Okay.
And that's basically what Cryptid Creatures was. The kids said, we want more meat.
Right.
And now they've got sea monsters.
I always ask the opposite of that. Was there a book that you wrote that you thought would do better that didn't?
Yeah, I wrote a book called Wild Horses. And when I was a kid, I had a horse.
Okay.
I saved up $60 and I bought a wild Mustang.
Okay.
And I had to teach her everything. So I fell in love with horses. And I got this opportunity to write this wonderful book called Wild Horses. And it was all the indigenous horses for different continents. And then my editor got sick. And they hired this woman who didn't apparently know how to make children's books. Because I had all this cool archaeology that supported what we know about these horses.
Okay.
And she said, I'm going to pull all the archaeology out because this is a book about horses, not archaeology. And I said, yeah, but we know about the horses because of the archaeology, like the cave paintings in France, for example.
Right.
So we ended up, this is before we had cell phones proper.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up on the phone for 6 days, 7 hours each.
Oof.
Going over page by page by page. It was the worst experience.
Okay.
And she apparently went into another field, which is good for us both. But it would have been this cool horse book. My goal was to make a horse book that boys and girls would love. Because most girls love horse books.
Right. I mean, yeah.
But all that archaeology would pull a boy in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was one story that got cut. There were these reliefs, these 3D, not 3D, but raised sculptures.
Right.
Carved into the rock of a cave. And when they were trying to put in a new walkway so people could go and look at these, they noticed the walkway, they had wooden walkways, and they noticed that it was kind of wiggling. And they pulled the wooden walkway up, trying to level it. And when they leveled it, they found an ancient body, just the skeletal remains of someone who had been buried in the cave thousands of years ago.
Oh.
And it was a little girl. So was this a little girl that loved horses? Was her father the sculptor? I mean, it was just this amazing mystery about this body that was found intern with these beautiful horses.
Mm-hmm.
Cut it. Nope, that's archaeology. That's not about a horse. Except it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was unfortunate. Maybe someday I'll get to write the book I had in mind.
Okay. So when you're researching, so you're in Spokane.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff you're writing about is around the world.
Yeah.
How do you conduct your research?
Well, when I start my research, it begins with Google News. I look for articles on my topic.
Okay.
And I've always done this for articles for, newspapers and magazines. That's where you start. You start on what's already been written.
Mm-hmm.
And you read and you read and you read, and you end up seeing certain names keep coming up.
Right.
So you say, okay, that's who I need to talk to. So then you search for that expert. And if they're a good expert, they're usually affiliated with a university or a museum or something like that. So I contact the expert. If I do my job right, they say, yes, I'd love to speak with you. And then that's how I do it. And then I call them. I depend heavily on the telephone.
Okay.
For interviews. And I interview them and they say, yes, you can use my interview. And then I have to do photo research to make sure they're images to go with these. Because most of my books have photographs for illustrations. Some of them have Rick Spears, who's my favorite illustrator. But it's a long process. You have to learn a whole lot.
Right.
Before you even get started on formatting the book and knowing what you want to include and what you want to cut. Like I wrote a book called Alien Investigation because after I figured out Bigfoot might be real, and I think he might be, I thought, what else have they told us is not real? And I thought Area 51.
Right.
Because I said, oh, kids, there's nothing there. Nothing ever happened there. So I go looking into Area 51 and I discover there are a whole lot of military experts still living who say, no, something did happen there.
Right.
And so I get to say, wait a minute, maybe, it's not there now. Here's how the story goes. Supposedly, UFO crashed near Roswell, New Mexico, cattle rancher's ranch. Guy who runs a cattle ranch is upset because there's a mess on his land. He doesn't want to have to clean it up. So he calls the sheriff and he brings in some of the debris and he goes, who's responsible for this? Because I'm not cleaning it up. And then the sheriff says, ooh, this looks military. Let's call the Army Air Force Base at the time. It was one service, which was Area 51, Groom Lake. So they called a guy named Major Marcel. And Major Marcel comes to the sheriff's office and says, this is weird. Where did you find this? Show me. So they go back to the site where the crash is. Marcel calls a flatbed truck from Area 51. And all the troops he needs to gather all the debris. They gather it all up. The big pieces go on the flatbed. Little pieces go in cardboard boxes. Most of the boxes are on the flatbed, go right to Area 51. Marcel takes one home because he wants to show his kid. Because his kid is 12, Jesse Jr. And he says, I want to show my kid this weird stuff. So he takes it home, wakes his kid up, dumps it on the floor, says, see if any of the pieces fit. This is all in a book that Jesse Marcel Jr. wrote.
Right.
With his father. Because he had to swear not to say anything until he was near his deathbed, and then they wrote this book. They look at all this stuff. Jesse's looking at it. He's 12. He's pretty big. You're pretty grown up at 12.
Right.
And he's going, Dad, there's symbols on this one. He called them hieroglyphics because they were studying Egypt in school. And he noticed if he tilted this little bar in the light of the kitchen that it would turn purple. All things a 12-year-old would remember.
Right.
And then Dad says, okay, put everything back in the box. I better get it turned in. But you be good for your mom. I'll see you in a few days. And Jesse Jr. says, yes, sir. And he brings the box in and everything gets turned in. Everything was at Area 51 briefly. But then it all went to a base in Texas. And then it finally landed, according to the experts, at Wright Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. And it is supposedly all still stored there, whatever it was.
Interesting.
Now, Jesse Marcel sent out a press release, senior, the dad, saying, yep, we found a flying saucer. They didn't make it up. That was from the Army Air Force. And it was in all the newspapers. Remember all the headlines?
Yeah.
Saucer found in Roswell. And then the Army Air Force got a little upset and said, Marcel, you got to fix this because you're going to cause a panic. So Marcel has to go back and say, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm an expert on all aviation, but I mistook a weather balloon for a flying saucer. And he had to do it. It was an order.
Wow.
So his career was tanked. And he stays quiet and he stays quiet and he stays quiet. And finally he decides to write this book. He's on the edge of life, writes this book, passes away. And that's where Jesse Jr. comes in. Now you say, hey, can we trust Jesse Jr.? Did he grow up to be a drug dealer? Who was Jesse Jr.? He grew up to be a medical doctor.
Okay.
Pretty reliable science guy. And he served in the military. He flew the helicopters to evacuate the wounded. And then he patched them up.
Okay.
And he says, what I saw in my kitchen was not part of a weather balloon. What I saw in my kitchen was not of this world.
Wow.
Now that's a pretty convincing witness. Now, do I know for sure he's telling the truth? No. But I know he's a reliable witness, and I can put his account in along with the other accounts that say, no, it's not real. And then the kids get to decide, and they get the critical thinking skills, because you cannot believe everything you read or everything you see on the internet.
What?
That's how we get little girls stabbing their friends to live with Slender Man.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where to ask a question. Because usually a kid says, hey, Mom, is Slender Man, which is this creepy character that came from a fictional story, turned into a video game and all kinds of other nonsense. Supposedly, if you killed somebody for him, you could live in his mansion with him forever. That's the fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But these little girls thought it was real. And for like 8 years, kids were saying, you're weird. Is Slender Man real? They can ask me because I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
You ask your parents and they go, that's stupid. Don't bother me with that.
Right.
And then those two little girls think it's real. I'm going to kill my friend. They stab this girl in the woods. She lives, but they go to jail.
Yeah.
Because they had no one to ask, is this real? So if we let kids weave in and out of this truth and not truth land, then we can be the people they can trust. Well, let's look it up.
Right.
Let's see. Let's look it up ourselves.
Okay. When you're not researching, when you're not doing school visits, when you're not talking on a podcast, what do you like to do? You moved to Spokane. What do you like about Spokane?
You know, I lived in Colorado, and I liked the weather then because I was young and I didn't mind shoveling snow. And I wanted a climate like Colorado. And Spokane is, I mean, it could be Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about Spokane is a lot like Colorado, but it was a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted a place where my money would go further.
Okay.
And, my daughter was a gothy girl at the time, my oldest. She loved Marilyn Manson, and it turned out he was going to come in concert. Yeehaw.
Woohoo.
And, but it made her feel more secure about Spokane, which is fine. And then my little one was 8. She was, as long as we're all there, the 3 of us, she's fine.
Okay.
And Spokane turned out to be great, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It's a great place to raise a family.
Okay.
But that's why I picked Spokane. I had, my parents lived in the Austin area, Austin, Texas. I'm a pretty liberal girl, so Austin's fine, but Texas is a little outside my league.
Right.
Cleveland, I love Cleveland, but it's cloudy so much of the year. Santa Fe, I love, too expensive.
Right.
So Spokane, and it was a winner. I tried to get assignments in all those places. Okay. So that I could visit for free.
Okay.
So
we went back to Cleveland this summer for a few days, and
well, the Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there.
Well, we went and saw the Rolling Stones there, and then we went to the Hall of Fame the next day, and it was Cleveland's. There's a lot of the humidity,
and the people are nice. It's a great place, but it's like 8 months a year. It's cloudy.
Yeah. All right. Questions?
Oh, I play video games. I used to have a dog that I walked. I had a Great Dane. You have to walk them.
Right.
I have one cat now, which is the fewest pets I've ever had. I used to have a 5-foot rock iguana.
Jeez, okay.
Who I would play with, oddly enough.
All right. So I don't know if you can hear. Unfortunately, my dog is in the yard right now. He's found something to bark at, so he may be bursting in here any moment to say hello to the show. So I always ask my guests a couple of questions about their town. So here's 2 questions for you about your town. Number 1, I'm a coffee fan. I love coffee. So where's a good coffee shop in Spokane?
My favorite coffee shop in Spokane is one called Rocket. It's Rocket Bakery and Coffee.
Okay.
It's on Cedar.
All right.
Which is kind of just in the heart of downtown, right by KHQ, the TV station.
Okay.
They have great coffee. They have great scones. They have great bagels. They have, yummy coffee stuff and giant cookies if you're into that.
Right.
But I also like the coffee at Frank's, which is a diner in Spokane.
They just have good coffee. Frank's am I confusing? Is that the one that's in the rail car?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what?
And they have breakfast all day.
Yeah, you know what? I've been in there before. You're right. It's diner coffee, which I am not a coffee. I love coffee. I love good coffee, but I also will drink. I'll drink coffee at Denny's type thing. And Frank's had really solid diner coffee. I have not been to Rocket. So when you go to Rocket, what do you order? What's your coffee drink?
I just get drip coffee.
Okay.
I like drip coffee with a little cream and diet sweetener. I like that pure coffee, but people always say you want a little coffee with your cream because I like it to be pretty tan.
So I drink drip or, pour over just straight black coffee. And I'll certainly have another coffee beverage, but some people get.
But I have 2 coffee snob daughters and they were like, they'll have that latte double shot.
Yeah. Okay.
Blah, blah, blah.
All right.
And it's like that.
I want coffee. All right. So follow up to that question. I'm going to get to Spokane. In fact, I'm going to Spokane we're recording this on a Monday. I'll be in Spokane on Friday. So I'll be in Spokane on Friday and I'll probably be getting there about lunchtime. So this, you could really help me out here. Where's a place I should check out for lunch?
Well, you've already been to Frank's. Do you want to do that again? Because Frank's is my go-to.
Let's give me something else besides Frank's, and I may end up at Frank's, but let's something else. Frank. Put you on the spot.
There's another little diner on the north side.
Okay.
It's called the Wall Street Diner.
Wall Street Diner.
It's smaller. It's very little known, but it's cute as it can be, and they have really good food.
Okay.
I did not have coffee because I had lunch there. Okay. But it's got a great feel.
Okay.
And it's on the north side, and people ignore the north side a lot.
Interesting.
But you could also go, there's another diner on Garland in the north side that was in Vision Quest.
Okay.
The Matthew Modine movie.
Oh my God.
Ferguson's.
Okay. So the Wall Street Diner.
Super worth your while.
Wall Street Diner, what would you be ordering there?
I ordered, the time I had there last, I ordered a bagel sandwich.
Okay. All right.
With avocado and bacon and eggs and all kinds of goodness.
That's hard.
But at Ferguson's, you can get a great patty melt.
Ooh. Okay.
Which is one of my go-tos.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
On good old-fashioned rye. Mm-hmm. You can get it with the fried onions. You can get it without the onions.
Okay. All right.
Ferguson's it's cute.
Okay. All right. All right. A couple last questions for you. Number 1. Okay. What didn't I ask you that I should have? We covered the book. We kind of covered your career and all of that. But is there anything that we could have talked about that we didn't get to?
Sometimes people say, what accomplishment are you the proudest of? And I'm proud of my career.
Okay.
I've managed somehow to pay off a mortgage.
There you go.
Which on what I make seems just incredible. But the thing I'm most proud of is being a mom.
All right.
Because these 2 little people landed in my world and they taught me everything. I mean, you think you know everything when you have a kid, and it turns out you don't. And you're learning as you go.
All right.
And these are incredible little creatures who teach you to see life through a different vision.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that kept me fresh.
Okay.
And the stuff I wrote for kids.
Okay. What do you?
Because I had kids right there, and I could say, "What do you think about this?" Like my eldest daughter loved the mummy book. Mm-hmm. She loved creepy things. My youngest would say, "Close those mummy books. I'm coming into the room to eat." And they're so different and so individual and so great. Okay. And so, if I had to be proud of one thing, it'd be my 2 little people who are not little anymore.
All right. And that's something that we as parents, there are a lot of work. There's moments where you go, what was I thinking? And there's moments where, you couldn't change a thing. My two kids are great. And,
but that's why I'm good writing for kids.
Yeah.
Because even though I'm old and they look at me when I first walk into a school, they go, oh my, she's old. And so the first thing I say is, did you notice I'm old? Let's get it off the table. Let's just say it out that front. And they go, yeah.
That's funny. That's great.
Who knew? It's surprising I can still walk, isn't it? And they go, yeah.
Yeah.
Because to them, I'm a million years old.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we get past it. And then by the end of it, they're all saying, oh, I wish you were my grandma because you're so weird. So the weird kid in me gets to connect with the weird kid in them. And that's by way of my kids.
I love that.
Who fortunately grew up as weird as their mother.
I love that.
Yay.
All right. 2 things. Number 1, where can people find out more about you? Where do you want them to go online? And we'll put it in the show notes too. So just
they can go to my website, which remember I keep saying I'm weird because I am. It's true. You can go to wondersofweird.com.
Okay.
So think, wow, that's wondersofweird.com.
Okay.
And if you just do weird and Kelly, you'll probably find me. If you find something R-rated, forgive me. I'm not guiding you to that. But if you do Kelly Writer Weird.
Kelly Writer Weird, but Wonders of Weird. All right, we'll put that in the show notes.
Wondersofweird.com.
All right. So here's my last question of you. Now, you have to answer this question. You can't take a pass, and you have to explain your reasoning. Okay?
Okay.
This is hard-hitting journalism. You ready?
Ready.
Cake or pie, and why?
I'm going to have to go with pie, cherry, or peach.
Okay.
When I was pregnant with my first daughter, all I could eat were avocados and cherry pie.
That's an odd combo.
It is a very
That's an odd combo.
It is very strange, but cherry pie was like heaven, and I still love cherry pie. Okay. But I also love peach pie. They're tied for first.
Okay. All right. See, some people it's easy. Some people it's like asking to pick which one of your kids, left or.
I know. I do like cake too. I mean, who doesn't like cake? My daughter doesn't like cake.
Yeah.
For birthdays, we had to bring cups of macaroni and cheese. Strange.
Oh my gosh.
Go figure.
All right. Well, Kelly, thank you for sitting down today.
Thanks, Scott. It was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm going to check the book out when it's released. I only to practice saying the word, which we're not going to get me to say it again because I'm never going to get it pronounced right. But I really think it's fascinating, and I had no idea why we had no dinosaur fossils, and it's glaringly obvious when you say that this was covered in prehistoric water, back.
But here's what's also in the book. There's Cretaceous rock on Sucia Island, but there may be Cretaceous rock in Metho Valley. So we may find more. We'll see.
That's okay. Wow. Where in the Metho?
But thanks for having me. It was great fun.
Where in the Metho?
Just Metho Valley rock formations up there. The reason we don't find them so far, remember when you think of the Badlands in South Dakota, how there's no greenery?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the greenery is what protects stone. So it erodes like crazy in the Badlands. That's why they find the dinosaur fossils. In Metho Valley, it's covered in greenery.
Got it.
So that's holding the rock together.
Okay.
So they're not washing out for us to find. But the rock formations, according to some scientists, are Cretaceous. So there could be, if you wanted to cut through all the plants.
I don't think we'll be allowed to do that, but that's actually very fascinating.
It is fascinating, and who knows?
Well, again, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. I'm glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.